Hello and welcome back to the Wheel Talk podcast. My name is Abby Mickey. We're here to talk about women's professional road cycling, plus, I don't know, anything else that comes up. I am absolutely over the moon to say that I'm joined by Loren Rowney.
I'm back, everyone.
Yay! Back with a guest.
Oh yeah, I was like the guest looking at Gracie going, Gracie's not a guest. She's like well established on this podcast. Yes, Louie is joining us today. So if you hear any, what is the sound? Like baby sounds is a word for it. Like not
gurgling?
Gurgling? I was going to say mewing.
Maybe?
But that's like a cat, right?
That sounds cuter though.
Yeah.
Than gurgling. Well, Gracie is also here. The trio is back.
And not quite making baby sounds yet, but you never know. Something might pop out of my own mouth.
Yeah. That pregnancy brain is real.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the UAE Tour, plus we got Setmana Ciclista Valenciana coming up, and the start list is stacked for that one. Okay, UAE Tour. So last year, UAE Tour was like the sprinter showdown of the year with Lorena Wiebes and Charlotte Kool. And it was the first time that we really saw Lorena Wiebes have a ton of competition in the sprint field, mostly because Charlotte Kool, her lead out rider on DSM, stepped it up last year and was able to beat her in 2 stages of the UAE Tour. So coming into the UAE Tour this year, I was really excited to see that showdown again, especially with Lorena Wiebes and her form last year and how dominant she was at sprints last year. I was excited for that. But Charlotte Kool announced right before the race that she would not be racing due to illness. And because of that, we got the Lorena Wiebes just totaling the field for the first 2 stages of the race. The lead out on the first stage, specifically with Kopecky, was just like, okay, well, this is how the season is going to go.
Yeah, well, I mean, Gracie, you were there on the ground last year commentating. And one of the fun things from last year's tour was actually watching just the organization of those sprint trains, because it's something we've spoken about that the past few years, it's not just a few teams now, but it was like really almost every team was getting super organized, which I loved seeing. Chaotic at times, but the hardest thing I found was definitely the jersey thing. I think it was Tills on Discord that said that at times I thought I was looking at SD Worx and I'm like, they're not moving that fast, but I had the team wrong because of the colors and just like the zoomed out angle.
When I wrote my kit review article a couple weeks ago, I was really hopeful that we wouldn't have this problem this year. But then when you actually see Human Powered Health and SD Worx Protime in the same, like next to each other, it is really hard.
And I think even like the Jaco Lula colors have that pink in it too, or they've changed. There's a bit of orange as well. I don't know. Anyway, it was confusing for me, but definitely that's the highlight for me for this tour is just watching the sprint trains get organized, and then just seeing, how the other teams, obviously you've got established sprinters like Clara Caponi was there and she had a really good race, I thought, for Little Trek. Raquel Barbieri stepped it up. And it looks like it was a good move for her to go to DSM. And then, for the other teams there that weren't really going to feature in the sprints compared to these top level sprinters, you had to ask the question, like, what were they doing there and what were they going to get out of these stages when it's a bit of copy and paste from last year. The first 2 were going to be a sprint finish. We can talk about the last stage later. That was more interesting for me because, these early season races now, like we discussed on the podcast before I went on leave for a few weeks, the riders' levels are higher now. And I guess a lot of these riders will be targeting the Spring Classic. So you don't want to just show up to a race like this and just be one of the numbers. You want to sort of try and get something out of it, which is often the breakaway. Even if, you're going to get caught with 2 kilometers to go or in the last few hundred meters.
Yeah, I didn't get to watch the full stages because I couldn't figure out how to from Australia without spending a lot of money, which I wasn't prepared to do just yet in the season. So no Flowback subscription for me just yet, but that's maybe going to have to happen at some point. But the highlights that I could find available showed the best part of the first couple of stages. I assume that there weren't good enough crosswinds to do damage in that way. And then those roads, I haven't raced on those roads especially, but just from experience in Qatar, like it's pretty much hot mix a lot of the time. And if there's not a lot of wind, you're just carrying a lot of speed in the bunch. So it is quite hard to get a good breakaway going unless the bunch lets it go. And often, on a stage one of any tour, that's less likely. So it would have been nicer to see a bit more action in that way. But I think it's actually quite hard to make it happen. So,
and with stage one, like, my memory is terrible at the moment, but SD Worx did the chasing, didn't they? No, they didn't. It was that's the point I wanted to get at. On stage one, the riders that were up the road, it wasn't SD Worx, it was WNT who started with the chasing. And then I had to think, like, well, yeah, wouldn't you obviously in the last stage we saw what happened there, but they didn't chase. They weren't forced to chase early, which I think was a bit of a mistake.
They handed the stage to SD Worx in a way, which was definitely a weird choice, like knowing that Wiebes is Wiebes. And even though it's the first race of her season, you still look at what she did last year and you're like, okay, well, no team should work except for SD Worx. But I think the first stage they expected there to be crosswinds and they weren't as bad as they expected. Something about trees being planted along the road right where they thought the good crosswinds were going to be. And then stage 2, there actually were crosswinds. And there's photos of the peloton just splintered apart, but it didn't last and still came down to a bunch sprint. And I think stage 2, there was a lot more control by SD Worx, especially with the leader's jersey. But yeah, stage 1 was weird. I feel like it was one of those like first
races of the season.
First, like early season confusion about excitement, early season excitement, and also just like the chaos of what is the first races of the year where you don't really know.
Yeah, and I guess, yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, sometimes I think one of the commentators was making the decision. Who's making the call? Is it the directors in the car right now, or is it the captains on the road or the riders themselves deciding what they're sort of doing in those moments? But like, if you haven't been that active or present, I suppose, in that stage as a team, and then you want to do something, sometimes maybe there's a bit of panic at the end that, yeah, we've got to send our riders to the front and actually do something now, because if there is a chance this stays away and SD Worx do gamble that we're just going to bring it back, we don't want to make that risk.
Something I do like about SD Worx, and I'll give them credit for, is they're good at playing poker. And we've talked about them doing that lots in the past, of not working until they really have to. And another thing that I like in that same vein, and that I noticed in the final 5K of both all 3 stages except for the third stage, was that they're super disciplined as a unit and they don't go anywhere near the front, even with 5K to go. And other teams are all burning their matches on these wide open roads, and they're all together hiding. You didn't see them on the camera shot a lot of the time until about 2.5K to go. And then you see them snake through on one side, either up the side or just, by a team or two. And I really love that. And I think that's worth highlighting. They're obviously they've got a shit ton of firepower in that team, but they're really disciplined about how they use it.
And it speaks to the maturity of the riders as well, when you've got that camera angle at the back and they're chilling at the back. Of course, this race, it is those big, wide open roads. So there's never that panic within those last kilometers, like with the races here in Belgium or the Netherlands, or actually anywhere where you've got those technical finishes or technical parts leading up to a finish. I mean, things can get really intense with 20 kilometers to go, and then you have to burn a couple of matches just to get the real lead out train into position. But yeah, like you said, Gracie, it is really cool to watch just how calm and collected and mature the team is.
And like plenty of other teams, they were burning matches for kilometers. You're like, how many people do you want left? Anyway, I just think it's interesting. And I think a lot of people can, like, I say this every time when we talk about sprints, it's like worth going to watch it a few times, especially as a rider, because like you can learn a lot from who does it well and who does it almost well and who does it poorly. And then also like who, I don't really want to make this comparison, but like Kopecky really reminded me of Van der Poel's lead outs for Philipsen last year at the Tour. Like it's like just having that extra weapon.
Yeah.
They're a formidable duo, and Kopecky just seemed so in control. And she got out of the saddle and she powered for a good 2 or more 100 meters each time. And Loretta, all she had to do was just pop out at exactly 150 to go. And obviously she's like super fast. So yeah, I think that was pretty cool to see that combination so clearly, because we've seen it a few times before, but like, yeah, I thought it was really good.
I think what's amazing about Lorena as well is she can win sprints in different ways. Like talking about different sprinters, you've got the ones that need to go, things need to be wound up from a long way out, and it becomes almost that drag race. And you could even see, like with Georgia Baker, she's definitely a sprinter who was coming and gaining ground towards the end. But with Lorena, she can do it in any number of ways. But it's a question now moving towards, we're at the start of the season. And we've discussed this, how do other teams beat Lorena? Because I think Trek now have a really good sprinter combination that is going to be really curious with Elisa Balsamo and Clara Caponi. I think she can be a fantastic last person for Lorena. And, you know, if we've got that same drag race going on between, say, Trek and SD Worx, I do wonder if a sprinter like Clara or Charlotte, we've seen it happen, will get over the top. So
yeah,
Chiara Consoni was up there for the first 2 stages. She was 3rd and 2nd, and she just kind of continues to chip away, and she's still super young. I feel like when it comes to her, she's only going to get better at these sprints. And UAE, they have the resources, which we'll talk about in a minute, to give her a better lead out train. I mean, I think she still has a good team around her to help continue to grow as a sprinter. But I do have a lot of hope for her in the future, because she really, like last year, she was getting better and better. And this year, you can already tell, like 3rd and 2nd in like consecutively is pretty decent.
It's a case of, you know, you've got the sprinters who are wanting to try and come off Lorena's wheel, like getting put into the right position by their team and then try and get over her that way. But I think for a lot of these riders, it's almost you've got to have your own setup, say on the right side of the road if they're on the left, and then just trust that you can come off your last man's wheel and that you're fast enough. And maybe that's going to be the way, like the drag race on different sides of the road, rather than trying to come over it. Because whether it's a drag race or it's a short top of a sprint, she just seems to still get that, you know, one over them, sorry.
Like, I think that you've touched on something good there, Loren. It's like trusting your own guys and not just trying to follow the wheel of Weber's, because she almost never touches the wind. And it's her skill, but it's also the skill of Kopecky and maybe 1 or 2 other of those SD Worx riders. They know where to be, so she is never in the wind as well. So like it's a cool thing to watch, especially Kopecky. Like she's looking around heaps, and she just moves that extra few centimeters so that Lorena never has to move herself anywhere that's in the wind. So anyone else that is fighting for that wheel, they're going to touch the wind even for a second here, there, and that just makes the difference. Like, of course, Lorena's arguably the best sprinter in the world, but she's still beatable. And like those sprints were not super close, but close enough to go, there's a few tweaks in that it could be way closer.
It's just she's getting that little jump on everyone. I mean, when you've got Kopecky doing what she's doing, and there's no other team matching that sort of firepower in that last woman, she's already got that meter or so on everyone else. So she's just coming straight off that wheel. And then, like I said, to come around her at this point in time is really difficult. Unless, it's a really long sprint, then I think that's when we could see the difference. If she was forced out at, say, 200, 250 to go, those could be the differences. But we could go on about this forever.
It's interesting that Lidl Trek didn't bring Balsamo to this race. She's on the start list for Setmana Valenciana, which she did that last year as well, and won the first stage, I believe, or maybe that was 2022. Anyway, they're all bleeding together, but it's a race that she's done before, and I'm surprised they didn't bring her to UAE because they knew it was going to be sprint stages, and we'll talk about stage 3 in a second and how they stacked up in the overall situation. But yeah, I'm excited to see how Balsamo stacks up against them with Caponi on her side, and if that makes any difference for her. She's not as pure a sprinter in theory as Wiebes, who is not even really a pure sprinter. What is a pure sprinter in women's cycling these days? But I do think that the two of them together are going to be more formidable than Aliza was last year with Lidl Trek and what they were able to provide for her as a lead out. And so I'm hopeful that, she had a hell of a season last year, as did the entire team, honestly. And hopefully with a little extra firepower. Because, yeah, like you said, Loren, being a good lead-out person, there's so much more to it than just having the power. You can't just because you are a fast sprinter doesn't make you a good lead-out person. And no. I think that is a problem that they've run into at Lidl Trek with the team that they've had in the past. So I'm excited to see how that goes come, I don't know, Ronde van Drenthe or something, Gent Wevelgem or something along those lines, if that makes a difference in how that happens. And I think once we get into those sprinty classics, we're going to have quite the list of riders that could unseat Wiebes. And I think that's going to be Caponi and Balsamo, Chiara Consoni, and Charlotte Kool. Between the three of them, Wiebes is going to have a lot of people to keep an eye on when it comes to the sprints. But right now, she's unbeatable. We got to talk about stage 3 because, well, speaking of Wiebes, freaking heck of an effort going into the bottom of the climb to set up Kopecky. She
burned off,
decimated the peloton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was burning off climbers. Very impressive.
It was incredible. She did such a great job going into the bottom of the climb for Kopecky, repaying her for those lead outs and everything. And then Kopecky that climb was, you'd think that a climb like this, it wouldn't be as exciting. And last year it wasn't as exciting because it was very much just Trek Segafredo with Aliza Longoborghini and Guy Riolini kind of just riding everyone off their wheel. But this year, the final 7 kilometers was just slow motion action the whole time. Between Aliza Longoborghini, last year's winner, being distanced already with 6K to go, and then the attack of Neve Bradbury, which was awesome to see. She rode so well in Australia, and so I think it's not all that surprising to see that form coming around again here. And it's kind of a bummer that there's not a ton of races that will suit her going forward. We're going into the Spring Classics, so looking at the races to come, I feel like for her, Strada could maybe be a good opportunity, but that really depends. She's one of those younger athletes who doesn't handle the bunch as well as some others. So I think for her, Strada is a good race to target, but maybe with a grain of salt. And then Trofeo Alfredo Binda will be awesome for her. But but she was amazing. I mean, her attack was amazing. Her timing was great. She just like felt it, and she was like, okay, I'm going to go now. And her attack like blew Guy Riolini off the back, and like one of the best climbers in the peloton in theory, and she just rode away from that. And then Kopecky riding up to her was just like, I mean, you kind of have to laugh because like she was amazing on the first two stages and could probably win sprints on her own. And then her riding on Saturday, I mean, she was just, I wrote in the article after the race that she was like an AI generated bike racer. Like she looked amazing on the bike. Like she looks like what every single person goes into a bike fit and is like, I want to look like this on my bike.
Yeah.
Like she just looks so good on a bike. And there was one shot of Mavi Garcia who did it a ton of work. Like Mavi led most of the climb after Guy Riolini had pulled off the front and done a bit of work post Weebus. And then it was mostly Mavi who did the most damage on the climb. But there was this image of like Mavi and Kopecky, and Mavi is all over the place, like just rocking back and forth, just complete chaos on the bike. And then there's Kopecky, and she is just like a solid freaking unit.
I have to say that Kopecky's amazing style, I think a lot of it is from the track work she's done from a very long time, because trackies learn to produce that really, really high power in the saddle, which quite often a lot of roadies can struggle with and have to go in and out of the saddle. But her positioning and just her what's the word for the way that her pedal stroke is just beautiful to watch. But to accelerate like that in the saddle, she basically did a time trial up that climb. And I think, in terms of getting rid of Kopecky and what we've seen from the Queen stage of the Tour de France from last year was she can handle really high power. Obviously, for a long time, she's a time trialer. Where she's going to come unstuck, and you could see she couldn't follow Bradbury, but she managed to then just up it a little bit and time trial her way across. So on a climb like that, I don't think it was definitely not steep enough to do enough damage to a rider like her. And you would need it to like the riders that were there should have been piggybacking off each other more. So not setting a high tempo. I think that's where Mavi went wrong. She's a rider, I think, that can handle the tempo going up and down. Whereas Kopecky is definitely the type that needs it to just be high, set really high, and then you're not going to shake her. And that's exactly what we saw. And Neve was really the only rider that had the guts to do that, which, spoke volumes about her maturity. And she just looked so calm and confident. I couldn't quite believe it. How much she's grown in the past couple of years. So that was the biggest highlight, I think, of that stage, was just to watch this young rider have a crack, not be afraid of the riders that were there who have beaten her before, and just go for the win. That takes a lot of confidence and guts.
If Gaia and Eliza had maybe been feeling better on the day, and they could have like gone 1-2, 1-2, 1-2 at Kopecky, I think it maybe would have been a different result. But it was the only team with more than one rider in that group, at least at the bottom stages of the climb, but clearly not feeling super great on the day, which I think for Eliza, I'm actually happy that she's not riding as well right now as she was last year, because last year she was so on fire so early in the year and then just sick the rest of the season. So I think for her, it's totally fine that she wasn't riding out of her mind already in February. I got high hopes for her later in the season. She can ease into it. For Gaia, I feel like, I don't know if she was sick or something, but for her, this would have been like a huge opportunity. So I'm curious what's going on there and how and why she wasn't able to hang on, at least to Mavi. Like, she finished 43 seconds down on Kopecky, but she finished 11 seconds down on Mavi. And I assume on any given day that Gaia would be better than Mavi on a climb. So I'm surprised to see that, and I'm curious what that means for. I mean, I don't think it's a huge deal. Like I said, it's February, and there are much bigger things coming in the season for both of those riders. So I think hopefully it doesn't knock her confidence. But it would be hard for a rider that young to have done so well last year and come into the race this year and be, not where they were. But they also rode this climb. I can't remember exactly how much faster, but it was like way faster than last year. And the field this year at the race in general was a bit more competitive. And we talked about that already with TDU. So I think it's just that everything has gone up a level, and Kopecky has gone up 3 levels. Like she said in an interview earlier in the year before this race that she's stopped working with her coach. She's coaching herself. And over the winter, she lost 3.5 kilograms, but she's kept the same power that she had last year, which is just insane. When it comes to a climb like this, this is the perfect opportunity for her to show that new skill, because it's a climb that is, not super steep, pretty gradual, a power climb, and she's got 3.5 less kilograms to leg up it. So it was an incredible performance, I feel like, from Kopecky and of course from Neve. Like she's had such a hard go of it the last couple of years, and that she's even still in the sport. I mean, the pandemic was brutal on her, and I'm just so excited to see her still there, but also still with the passion to be able to pull off a ride like this. I love it. I love to see it.
I think that there's a couple of things there. This is a big year. It's an Olympic year. So I think when we look at riders, particularly in February, we've already discussed this again. A rider like Elisa, who's so seasoned, and even with Gaia being part of such a professional team like Trek, they've got big plans, I'm sure, for her, and that is going to be around races like the Giro. So it certainly doesn't make sense that she's flying right now. And I think she'll have the team around her and maturity to know that, okay, she has ridden away from these type of riders on different days, but this is also a different type of climb. It's like one of those highway climbs that, like we were saying, is just the perfect gradient for a rider like Kopecky. So it's just, gauging the season. And like you said, Abby, I'm sure Elisa is looking at bigger things this year and just wants to make sure that she's building at the right times towards those goals and what makes sense right now. And I think with Neve, there goes baby. He doesn't want me to talk anymore. I
Gracie,
think
what do you think?
Yeah.
No, I'm enjoying.
Loren and I have been going back and forth.
No, I think I've been enjoying what you've both been saying. I don't disagree with any of that. I think, really happy to see Neve step up. I think for Australia, we're just lacking a little bit in results, lacking a lot, actually, to be honest, in results. So I think super great to see her stepping up. I don't know how that longevity is going to go for the rest of the season, coming in so hot now. But every athlete's different. Every athlete is, figuring it out. Some are just more experienced than others. So, someone like Elisa Longoborghini, for example, would be very knowledgeable now as to how she likes to peak and what races she's going to target and why. And those reasons are slightly different this year to maybe the last 2 years. So we might see her really peaking in a month or two, which is what we hope for. But bloody hell, Kopecky, I don't know where you put that team if they're already starting off so dominant. I'd love to know what they're doing for training and all the rest of it, but we'll never know. Very interesting. I didn't know that she was coaching herself. That's a cool little tidbit. And I think a bit like the Aussie races, you can read into this climb to a point, but I think the real honesty is coming in a few weeks' time when they hit the European roads. That's when everything comes out of what your off-season, pre-season work has really been all about. But I think a lot of people are very fearful of SD Worx already. So, yeah, I think they're going to be really tough to beat. I do want to make an honourable mention to the Saint Michel team. They put is it Marion Bunel? She was 5th on the climb, but they were really active in the summer as well in Australia. They were not passengers. I think that's really maybe one of the first times I've noticed them really riding cohesively as a unit and actually being quite competitive. So, yeah, I think that's kind of a team that's not particularly been on our radar that much yet. But they could have some good, talent scouts in that management of that team that have been developing some of these riders over the last few years. So it's cool to see what you would call a small Italian team actually punching above their weight, and a team that we might be talking about a bit more this year.
Good shout out.
They've actually, correction is corner, French team. But they've picked up a couple interesting riders this year. They've been around forever, this team, and they used to have the longest name in the peloton. I mean, it's still pretty long. Saint Michel Mavic Aubert 93.
I think that's why I said name. Italian. I didn't made a mistake, but it's the name that gets me. It's such an Italian name.
It's true. But they have like some pretty seasoned riders on their team, along with some young talent. They have Roxane Fournier, like she's been around forever and was on SD Worx for 2 years, so she's and FDJ for like a really long time. So they've got her on the team, and they also have I'm gonna butcher her name, but Victoire Gilman. She was on FDJ for, pretty much her entire career until now. Since 2017, she's been on FDJ, and she's new to the team this year. So they've picked up a couple of riders with a lot more experience after having been a young team. So I think that's one of the reasons that they've maybe stepped it up a bit, is they just have a bit more experience in the team to guide those young riders that would be coming into the team with a lot of talent and a lot of ambition. But I agree, like Marianne Bunel, her ride on Saturday was super impressive. And I feel like it's not at all surprising to see Paulina Roarkis up there for Phoenix Deceuninck as well. She excels at the climbs, but it would have been her first race for Phoenix Deceuninck after coming over from Canyon SRAM. So, yeah. There's like one big bit of Peloton gossip that we're going to talk about, and I can't decide if now is a good time to do it or if we should wait. I think we'll do it now because it's relevant to Kopecky's performance on Saturday and her overall win. And that is, if Kopecky is climbing this well, and I don't know if her climbing this well right now means that she's going to be a contender for the Giro or the Tour coming up later in the summer. Sorry, Lila just walked in with like the most mischievous look on her face. I don't know if that means she's going to be a GC contender later on at the big tours, because she is targeting the track for the Olympics. So it's not the climbing as well as she did at UAE Tour is not really the end goal for the year for her. I think it's just kind of a cherry on top of her form, which she said she's not even at top form. Her goals on the road are the classics and things coming up later in the summer. But if she is indeed climbing this well, what does that mean for the dynamic that is Demi Vollering and Lotte Kopecky, both of whom are on a contract year, both of whom have been rumored to be leaving SD Worx Protime at the end of the season. My baby is also making sounds. Not really a baby anymore. When can you not call them a baby anymore?
They're still babies. Harry's still a baby. He'll be a baby when he's probably 20.
But yeah, what does this mean for the two of them? Because we already saw them butt heads a little bit last year at Strade Bianche when they came up together to the finish. And according to SD Worx, that was smoothed over after that. But if Demi is sitting at home watching Kopecky ride like this on a climb, like, is she going to be threatened? What does that mean for the team?
I don't think Demi will be threatened by Kopecky in the high mountains. I mean, I could eat my words later, but I think she has the sense and maturity to know Kopecky is phenomenal, but I still think compared to Demi in those real big mountains with the like this really steep gradients, the really long climbs, Demi is still going to be, for the meantime, the number one rider in the world, just based off what we saw last year. Where they could butt heads and will continue to is maybe just with the classics, which both of them are so well suited to. And there's any number of them that they could both win. So it's just going to be a situation of who actually goes at the right time and is in the right move or has gone solo. But in terms of contracts and whether both those riders are going to stay on SD Worx, I don't know. Do you leave something that's a really good thing at the moment and where you're getting a lot of success and it seems to gel quite well in terms of how they work? I don't know.
I mean, the rumor going around is that UAE offered Demi €1 million to join them, and that Kopecky is being courted by many teams. Movistar, I think, is the most outspoken about their desire for Kopecky. And I think it is a real possibility that Kopecky will leave the team at the end of the year. I'm not sure where she'll go, but I do think that of the two of them, she's more likely to leave the team. But the whole situation with Demi is so interesting because the rumor about the $1 million contract came from a Dutch column. So it wasn't even a news article, really. And according to some rumblings I've heard, UAE were shocked when they saw the headline of that article because they did not realize that they'd offered Demi $1 million. And then the next kind of hilarious / just really interesting chunk of all of this going on was that Danny Stam, the head director for SD Worx, said, no, we wouldn't pay that much for Demi. We want Demi to stay, but we're not going to pay her that. So I feel like the whole thing is just like, it's like a soap opera playing out. And it's cool that we actually get this in women's cycling now, that there is money being thrown around for a rider of her caliber, and like that it's playing out in like a very dramatic way in the media. Like it's entertaining at least, but I do feel like I would be super shocked if Demi did leave the team, because she's, the protege of Anna van der Breggen, who's the director there. She started with the team, was built up with the team, and is very much like the golden child of that team. And it's a team that I think will continue to build her. And I don't know if she went to another team, if she would have that. If she went to UAE, I don't think that she would continue to grow as a rider. I think she would just stagnate. And maybe she would still be as good as she is now, but the rest of the peloton is going to catch up to her eventually. So wouldn't she want to keep getting better? And I think she can only do that with SD Worx.
And I think she strikes me as a Dutch rider that likes to be on a Dutch team. And it is very Dutch, like, they're based in the Netherlands. Most of the staff are Dutch. And quite often you do see that with some of the Dutch riders. It just seems to work. And so, yeah, I agree with you on that respect. And I think there is a close relationship between her and Anna, at least the past years there were. And I feel like she would want to continue to work with Anna. I don't know, is Anna still coaching her? At one point she was coaching her. So yeah, that relationship makes sense. And okay, if the money thing is a rumor, I mean, getting paid double probably what you are getting paid for 1 year, that would be quite an enticing deal to take, I think, particularly at this point in where women's cycling is. I mean, that was unheard of, a €1 million contract. I think it still is unheard of at this moment. But yeah, for Kopecky, it would be, for me, where would she go? which team would be the best fit for her personality, the way that she races, and how actually the team races themselves. Because when you put a rider like that in a new team, sometimes it can throw off the whole dynamic of how the team has functioned previously. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, it's almost like the recipe at SD Worx at the moment makes everyone better because they're all pushing each other, which, you know, can come undone really quickly as well. But at the moment, it's really working. So I think, yeah, I kind of agree with Abby, though, in that I'd see Kopecky more likely to be the one to leave than Demi. But, yeah, you never really know what's going on behind the scenes. And what other goss they know that we don't know, of who might they take with them, or other riders from other teams that would also be of interest to them to work with, and just their general mentality, whether money is really important or not. And but I don't know Demi at all, but like she strikes me as the kind of person that is about personal growth more than making money. So I think it's just one of those individual questions you have to ask yourself, whether it's worth going somewhere for money. And maybe at the end of your career it is, but maybe not in the middle of it.
I mean, I think if they do both leave SD Worx, we're looking at a way different peloton for 2025 and a lot of different teams winning, because without them at SD Worx still has an incredibly strong team, but it would definitely throw a wrench in their dynamic, not having Demi specifically. I think Kopecky is going to Kopecky wherever she goes.
Yeah.
And I think she relies less on SD Worx to win. Like, obviously, it's a team and it's a team effort, but like Wiebes and Vollering and even Marlon Rosa, like they're ingrained in SD Worx, and Kopecky is, because she also races full time on the track, she's kind of her own unit.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
It's something like Loren raised is like, let's just see how much they clash in the classics, because there's actually there's only so many opportunities where you're in the high mountains. There's not that many actual race days like that in the year. There's way more race days where you need to be versatile. And I'm looking forward to a few tough decisions that they're going to have to make.
Well, it's going to be a crazy, intense classic season. We know that. The next 2 months, it will be game on, which I just love.
Well, I think we'll have our answer to whether or not they will be leaving the team at the end of the classic season. I think that's going to be a deciding factor, how the team handles having these two super, super strong riders who are kind of melding into a similar type of rider. How they handle that is going to answer a lot of our questions. And I don't know which team would be the best fit for Kopecky, honestly. I mean, she's such a strong rider that you're right. Like, any team she goes into is going to be completely changed by her, for better or for worse. And I feel like looking at the teams, like, I mean, there are teams that maybe need a rider like her that could possibly be Movistar, Little Trek. Maybe like they really struggled last year, and I think they've already proven this year that they maybe needed some more riders that weren't 18 to fill their roster. I mean, already at Cadell's, they didn't field the full team, and I mean, they only had 3 in theory. Like, Loretta pulled out. And then a lot of that was due to illness, but still, it's like, for a team that's one of the best in the world, they potentially need that firepower. But Movistar is a team that they've had a world champion on the team, a very dominant world champion on the team already in Annemiek van Vleuten, and they know how to handle a rider like that, I think. Like, they would just let her do her own thing. And I think that's what Kopecky will want. I don't think she's going to stay. Like, I just don't think. Anyway.
Oh, hey, maybe Ineos is going to start up a team. How many years have we been saying that? I think since 2012.
Yeah, many, many years. I mean, if they were, Okay, I'll wait because I was crying.
Stage 4, which was meant to be another sprint stage, another, sweep of the 4 podiums by SD Worx, but the fairy tale ending did not happen for the team. They looked so disappointed after the finish. But like Gracie, I didn't get to watch the whole stage. I just watched the final 10 kilometers, which actually I think was the most thrilling part of it all, when you started to realize that, yes, this breakaway could survive, and that, in fact, they weren't gaining enough time at the finish. But I guess the talking points is what was happening between the breakaway companions. Did you watch the last 10K, Gracie, as well?
Just the highlights. I only got to see the highlights, so I didn't see that dynamic.
Well, I know Abby has some feels about it, so I'm going to wait for her.
The dynamics in the breakaway were super interesting because you had, 2 World Tour riders and 1 continental rider. And the strongest rider in the breakaway was Amber Crack. I mean, she was the one really propelling the break to stay away.
I think FDJ as well was one of those teams that, they didn't have like a standout sprinter that was going to take one of those sprinter stages. They put themselves out there on the mountain stage with Gladys Verholst, and then again very active on the 4th stage with Amber Crack. And like you were saying in our chat, Abby, I completely forgot that she'd moved teams, and what a start to the season for her. But she was definitely the strongest on the day there.
Yeah, I mean, she was super strong, and she was really pushing the breakaway to keep going. And they never had like a massive gap. I think the biggest they had was just over 3 minutes with like 50K to go, which, if you see a gap like that, normally you'd think, okay, in 50K, that's going to get completely decimated when SD Worx gets to the front. But when we saw it closing down and we saw, Amber eventually going solo and leaving the other 2 behind, the math was like, it was like so tight between the 2 of them. And at first with, I think it was maybe 5 or 6K to go, SD Worx had like 3 or 4 riders up there pulling the peloton. And then once it got to like 3K to go and Amber was solo, there was only 1 SD Worx rider left, and then all of a sudden there were none. And there were no SD Worx riders at the front at all. And they'd completely handed over control of the peloton to DSM, Firmenich, PostNL, and Human Powered Health were up there, and Liv Alula Jaco was up there for a bit. And there was just no work from SD Worx anywhere. They weren't there in the front of the peloton at all until you finally saw them closing in on Amber in the final like 200 meters. And then that was when Wiebes let her sprint loose. And I think if there'd been another 50 meters of road, she would have caught Amber because she was sprinting so fast. But Amber just, she took control of the situation. She was incredible. She's incredibly strong. We know that about her. We know she's a strong time trialist. It's what she does. And she's so fresh and new to the peloton. I think for me, the most impressive thing is that she knew to race with her gut. Like, she knew to just leave it all out there, because she's only been racing for like 3 years at this point. She was picked up by Jumbo Visma in 2021, I believe, but she came from rowing. She didn't build herself up in cycling. She's one of those riders that they found because they saw her power numbers and they were like, are you interested in cycling? And so she would have learned a lot at that team. And I think her going over to FDJ Suez is a really exciting development for FDJ Suez. Like, they need a rider like that. And they have Grace, obviously, but you kind of need more than one rider who can do an attack like that. And I think for her on this stage, everything just fell into place. Like, SD Worx was tired. Well, they were really focused on the overall, and I think that they would have really liked to win this stage, but the end goal was the overall, and the dynamics going on in the peloton and Amber just being on a really good day meant that she got her first World Tour win. And I think that the whole final 10K was just incredibly fascinating, watching what the peloton was doing, watching what the breakaway was doing, and how close it came. I mean, it wasn't until the final 2 kilometers when it was like, okay, Amber has this.
No, it was a lot of, like you said, she's really quite fresh and new to the peloton, not coming from a cycling background necessarily. Maybe she did a bit of cross training on the bike, but not coming from a racing background. And like you were saying, Abby, when you're in that situation, particularly like a race like this, where, you want those companions as close to the finish as possible if the brake is working and you're not losing speed, but to feel that moment that, I'm better off to go and do this solo and to cut the dead weight, essentially, that I'm just dragging with me, takes a bit of, confidence and maturity. I don't know if she had her DS in that moment, talking into ear, saying, if you feel good, go now. The gap is still big enough, and you can do this. It's going to be close at the end, but this is your best opportunity now. And you could see that, I was talking to my friend who's here watching the stage with me, and I'm like, the time isn't coming down as fast as I thought it would be at this moment. So I was hesitating. I'm like, nah, there's no way she's going to make it. She's solo and with the firepower of the peloton, surely. But like you said, it all played into her hands there at the very end. But I honestly thought in the last moment she was going to get caught because she just had nothing left in the tank. But it was a fun way to see a race like that finish like that, because I know, well, Gracie, you've raced Qatar many times. The last stage is always where someone tries to do that sort of breakaway attempt, and you just always know it's going to end up in that sprint. So to get proven wrong is always fun.
Yeah, it's cool to see someone have their day for racing smart, having, good legs, but capitalizing on anything funny going on in the peloton. And much like stage 1 is tough to win in a breakaway, the last stage of a tour has a better chance to win in a breakaway because of different dynamics happening with GC. I'm sure SD Worx would have loved to get another stage win. It's not like they're like, we've got 2, we're happy with that. But it's nice to see the breakaway have their day as well. And someone that we have talked about the last couple of years is knocking on the door, being close, and a rider that we've been watching for a little while. So getting a World Tour win is a big deal. So that would have been good, and definitely good for the FDJ team as well. They probably were a bit disappointed in their summer of cycling here in Australia. So a nice bit of team morale there for them going towards Europe. And also a good result for third with Dara Pikalik. It was a kind of a blip on the radar last year, winning stage 1 of the Women's Tour Down Under. And then, it's not like we didn't see her after that, but she was more like in the top 10s, top 20s in the year, and kind of faded off a bit. So I think for that team, especially with a bigger and better squad, for lack of better words, this year, I think that would have been also good for that team's morale as well, to come away with a bit of a result.
It was one of my favorite parts of the stage was the post-race. I don't know if they knew that the camera was on them, but FDJ was all kind of huddled behind the tent at the post-race, and her teammates were kind of giving Amber a hard time because she didn't raise her arms up when she crossed the line, and she was like, I didn't want to risk it. I did not know where anyone was.
You know what? That's a smart move, because we've seen that plenty of times.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, Weebus was coming so fast too that it would have been, but yeah, she was hilarious. She was there with her DS and everyone just having to tell the story over and over and over that she didn't raise her arms because they were screaming into the radio to just go, go, go. Yeah, it was hilarious. It was really funny. I feel like the whole race was awesome and gives us a little bit of a snapshot into what we're going to see coming up in the classics, like a really strong SD Worx, but also a peloton that is motivated to get the better of them. And I think that worked on the fourth stage, and the whole peloton is going to take a lot of confidence out of that, of SD Worx being beat. Like, I think we're headed into a season where it's very much going to be SD Worx versus the peloton, and I think that's great. I mean, I think it's going to make for good racing. So we have the classics coming up. First, we have Setmana Valenciana coming up this week from the 15th to the 18th. And then after that, it's opening weekend with Omloop Het Nieuwsblad and Omloop van Het Hageland. So it'll be, we're getting there. We're getting close. I think we'll wrap up this episode now. There will be a lot to talk about next week after Setmana Valenciana. It's a race that has traditionally been a target for a lot of the World Tour riders who didn't go to UAE Tour last year, and riders that are looking for a little bit more top end before the classics start. So already, like, the only team with the full roster out now is Little Trek, but they have a super strong team with Balsamo, Loretta Hansen, Guy Riolini, Amanda Spratt, and Sharon Van Anrooy. So half of the team is classics riders, half of the team is riders with goals later on in the season, and also some of the Italian one days. But there's 13, I think, World Tour teams total on the start list for Valenciana. So it's going to be basically a World Tour race in all but name. And I expect we'll see a lot of really strong climbers there as well. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if, like, Ashimo and Passio is there. And it's traditionally been a good opportunity for the team to organize themselves before the classics and kind of get their ducks in a row before they go into races that are a bit more chaotic, and also a good opportunity for different types of riders, because there's sprint stages and there's climbing stages. So a bit for everyone. And I remember Spratty actually was riding super well last year at this race. So we've got that on tap, but let's wrap up the episode with what we're obsessed with. And it will be no shock to anybody listening to this podcast.
I wonder what Abby's obsessed with.
Yeah.
My entire Instagram is just Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, the entire thing. And you know what? I love it because they are so cute together. And this morning when we got on this call, I was in the middle of showing Tom's a TikTok that Taylor just posted of she went clubbing after the Super Bowl with Travis and her parents. She's in the club with her parents, and it's amazing. And Travis is really bringing out a side of Taylor that I think most of us experienced in our early 20s. But Taylor, having been Taylor Swift, she never got to experience it. So I am just thrilled that he is allowing her to live out her early 20s now when she's 34. It brings me much joy. And the amount that they love each other is just like adorable. Like there's this pictures of them from the Super Bowl where like he's on stage and he blows her a kiss and she blows him a kiss back. And they just like, I wish everyone could have a person that looks at them the way that they look at each other.
Abby, it's like it's too good to be true, almost.
Don't say that.
No, as in like
true.
I'm not jinxing. Like I hope this is her forever, but it's like it's almost like that first love in a way, the way they're looking at each other. And now my Instagram is flooded by it too, because I decided to just look up some stuff, and now the whole algorithm,
For You page.
the whole algorithm is like yours. Yeah.
It is entirely Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
And Travis Kelce and all of her like completely ridiculous box from the Super Bowl that included like normal friends, you know, like Blake Lively and Ashley Avignon and
I love
Ice
that
Spice.
friendship, by the way. Like if there's a celebrity I want to be friends with, I don't know why. Maybe because I used to
Blake
love
Lively?
Gossip Girl. Yes,
but also because she bakes.
Ryan Reynolds.
And her fashion is like amazing. Ryan Reynolds, like imagine if you could just call up your best friend and be like,
Yeah.
hey, can I borrow your husband's Deadpool suit? Which is a thing that Taylor Swift did one Halloween.
Yeah.
But the two of them are hilarious. And then like randomly because she's super good friends with him. Paul McCartney, like,
yeah,
because why not? Like, I mean, the whole thing was just like, I love it. It brings me so much joy. And I feel that I've tried to refrain my obsession with Taylor Swift for months and months during this section of the podcast, but I can't anymore because look at them.
her life is like a fairy tale when I look at now. You've actually sucked me in to looking up stuff about her. I don't know why. Now I
You're
actually
welcome.
I'm not like a Swiftie, but I definitely look at her stuff. And now even like the algorithm on my news thing, it will bring up so much Taylor Swift news. Yeah, it's just taken over the world.
You're welcome. It's fun. It's a fun world.
She's flying into Australia this week for the tours here. I'm a bit sad that I'm not seeing her. I'm not a super fan like you, Abby, but I do like her a lot, and she would be pretty amazing to go see in concert. So there's going to be Swift Mania here for a week or two. Yeah. We'll forgive you for that one. I think the whole world was obsessed yesterday.
Yeah.
You really can't escape it.
I'm not currently using Instagram at the moment, but I looked up the news because I wanted to see the pictures.
Mm-hmm. Does she never like not look good? She just always looks amazing. That was it's like Margot Robbie. She's just natural.
I know. She's just like stunning.
Yeah.
And
anyway.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Celebrity crushes.
Inside and out. She's stunning inside and out. Like she's amazing person, amazing singer.
And I'm sure that you guys could be best friends.
I think we would. I think if we ever met in person, I would be totally cool. I would remain calm and she would be like, damn, she's cool. And we would be best friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm obsessed with this little guy making noises.
I'm also obsessed with him. Look at him.
Yeah. He looks like a little old man.
He's getting less squishy face though.
Yeah.
He's rounding out.
Yeah. But he definitely still has like he has the most expressive face, this baby. Like really. Mostly it's a look of disgust. I don't know why. But no, he's been super chilled and I'm just enjoying the whole newborn vibes. It's been really fun. And also just seeing how Harry has reacted to having a little brother. That's what I'm obsessed with. He calls him baby. And that's been really sweet to just soak up and sort of be in the moment at the moment, because looking after 2 kids under 3 is hectic.
Yeah, good job.
He's just passed out again. I know that he just opened one eye, like looked at me.
He's living the life.
Yep.
Just boob on tap.
Yep.
All the naps you could ever want.
Yep, getting carried everywhere.
Yeah, never have to use any of your body parts except your bowels.
And he does that, I think, every feed. So
yeah,
everything's working good. Yeah.
Gracie, what about you?
I'm not obsessed with anything at the moment, but I watched a good TV series over the weekend called Dead Ringers. It has Rachel Weisz, which I really like her. She's often very good. It's based off an old film that was based off a book. And it was pretty dark and actually very dark and a bit weird, but I like that kind of stuff. So anyone listening who's into that kind of thing, I think it was very well done. A good commentary on the wealthy class in America, but it was also based around these 2 twin sisters played by the same actress, which she did an amazing job, and whoever did the CGI did an amazing job. Who were fertility specialists and obstetricians, both of them. And so it got a bit crazy in some points. So probably not the best thing to watch when you're pregnant, but I thought it was still yeah, very entertaining. So I would recommend that, but maybe not if you're pregnant. Had a few nightmares, but it was worth it.
This has been awesome. I'm so glad we got Loren back for an episode. Hopefully next week also. And we'll be back next week to talk about Setmana Valenciana and prep for the classics.